Hey guys, welcome to part 3 of this helicopter VFX tutorial. In part 1 we actually did the helicopter and everything. In part 2 we did the motion tracking and the animation. And here in part 3 we're going to do our final composite and the shading and everything. So let's go ahead and get started. Now if you want to follow along with us, the links to the files and the blend file are in the description below. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, let's come out to one of these scenes and then go into the render view. You'll notice a couple things off. First of all, we don't have a transparent background. Number 2, we don't have lighting in the scene. And number 3, we can actually see this ground plane here, which we shouldn't be able to. So first, let's go into the Cycles render engine. I'm just going to go to Cycles, set the device to GPU compute. I'm going to change my sample size. Basically, I'm just going to change all these settings. If you want to copy them, feel free. But these are all the settings that actually decrease my render times. Going to set the performance to a 512 by 512. This is because I'm running on the GPU. And then in the color management, we want to make sure this is on filmic instead of standard. Okay, so to get our transparent background, we can go to film. Then we want to make sure that transparent is on. That kind of gives us our background. Now if we go to where the plane is actually near to the ground, we can see we kind of had a little bit of a shadow here. So we actually want to add in a HUI into our scene. Basically, HUIs give lighting data to our whole scene. So let's go to the shading tab, go to the world settings. I'm going to import a environment texture. We're going to open up and then open up this Copenhagen 4K HUI. Open that. Then we plug the color into the color of the background. Now let's go into the render view and see how that looks in our camera. Let's go ahead and re-enable our background image by going up to the camera, background images right here, just so we can see it a little bit better. So that is looking pretty good. I think our HUI is a little too dark for our actual scene. So let's go ahead and add in a gamma node. Just bring that into there, and then we're just going to decrease that a bit until we kind of get a lighter HUI and lighter lighting for our scene. Okay, so that is looking good now. We can go ahead and hop out of the world settings. Now there are a couple things I do notice. First of all, the shadow on the ground is a little too small. I like to add a little bit more shadow, so let's go to the layout tab. We're going to go add in a quick light. We're just going to make it a point light to make it simple for this. I'm just going to place it above the helicopter. Go into the lighting properties, and we're just going to increase this until we have some decent light in our scene. That's actually way too much. Let's just decrease this a bit, just very subtly. We don't need that much light in the scene. Then we can actually increase the radius just because it's a foggy day. We're not actually going to be seeing that hard of shadows. Okay, so that is looking good. One thing that we will notice that kind of makes the scene seem a little too fake is that there's no actual reflections of the actual mirrors, or even the grass should be showing a little green on the bottom of that little aircraft. So a way we can change that is to actually go ahead and add in a reflection map that I captured. Now when I was out shooting, I actually captured a reflection, a 3D photo to use for my reflections. I actually have a tutorial on how to do that. Link to that is in the description below if you're interested. So first of all, we need to actually add in a mesh UV sphere. Then we're basically just going to scale the sphere up to be basically around our helicopter, like this. Now we actually need to go ahead and make this a half sphere. So with X-ray selected, then going into edit mode, we're going to make sure we're in face select mode by hitting 3. Then we're basically just going to select all these faces down here. We just need to delete those. So now we have this little dome, but there is no floor to the dome, so we actually need to add that. Let's go into edge select mode. Then we can hold Alt and then click. That basically selects our little edge loop down here. Then we can press F to make a face. And so now this actual half circle has a face at the bottom of this that we can use. So now let's go into the shading tab. We're going to go to add a new material. We don't need this principled BSDF, so we can just get that out of there. And we can drop in our image texture node, put the color to the surface. Then we're just going to open up the reflection JPEG that I have in the description below. Now you will see that we can actually see it in the camera. So a way to disable that is to go into the object properties, go into the visibility section, and we only want to show this on the diffuse, glossy, and transmission. So let's just disable this from the camera, volume, scatter, and shadow. So now if we zoom into our helicopter, we can see that we have some green on the ground below, so that is looking really good. Now, one more thing I want to point out is that if we actually have the helicopter entering the sphere, if we go to a point, let's say right here, where the helicopter is half in the sphere, half outside the sphere, it'll mess around with our lighting and everything. Let me actually go ahead and render out an image just to show you what that looks like. So if I zoom in a bit here, you can see that this area right here is being affected by all the shadows and everything, whereas this area back here is outside of our sphere, and that kind of looks a bit off, doesn't look as realistic. So a way I actually found to work around this, you can actually have this parented to the helicopter so it follows it, but a better way that I found is to actually just select this, go into edit mode, select the face select mode, and then we're basically just going to select all the faces that the helicopter actually comes into contact with. So basically just all of these right here. Let's see if that's all of them. Let's just go ahead and delete those faces. You basically just need to play around with all the faces that it might come into contact with. Not that one. And then delete those. Basically just making a little hole for it to follow and go into. Again, we only really need this dome just for the grass texture down below. So that's looking good. Just a nice little hole for the helicopter to go through. So if for any reason you go back into your camera view and don't see your green on the bottom of the helicopter anymore, that's actually because we accidentally deleted the bottom face. So let's just go ahead and add that back in. Gonna go into edit mode up here, go into edge select, select these. We're gonna add a face. And that should bring the green back. If for any reason it's not really as green as you would like it, that's actually because the UV is off. So let's go into the UV editing tab. Then we can just go up here. We're going to go to 7, which is the top view. Make sure you have your floor selected, and then we can go to U, then project from view. That'll actually project this onto here. Now that we have the whole circle, we can just bring that down here, then scale it however we like. I'm going to scale along the X just to give that a little bit more. So now if we come back to the layout tab and then go into rendered, we should have a lot more green in our actual scene. So last thing that we need to do in the actual 3D viewport is to actually add some depth of field, because right now you can see that if we go all the way back here to where the helicopter is in the back, you can see that it's basically in full resolution, where if we come over here you can see that this is kind of blurred. So to add that, we're going to go to the camera, we're going to scroll down to the depth of field. And by default, it sets it pretty nice, but if you want to dial in your depth of field a little bit more, you can have these little options down here like the f-stop and the distance to play around with. Okay, so now we are actually ready to get into the compositing, so let's come to the compositing tab. First things first, let's just change this to convert pre-multiply. Now if we actually zoom in by pressing Alt-V to zoom in, you'll see that we have a very noisy image in our helicopter, and that doesn't really match the footage, so we actually need to denoise that image a bit. So let's come to the view layer properties, add a denoising data option. Then we're just going to add a denoise node. Plug the noisy image to the image, normal to normal, and albedo to the albedo. And now we can replace this image socket with the denoise node. Now I just rendered out one of the first frames of our animation. You will notice that the helicopter is still in view when really it should be behind this building. So what we need to do is actually go ahead and rotoscope out the building so we can actually mask that over the clip. So let's go to the layout option. Let's go to movie clip editor. Then instead of tracking, we need mask. And then let's open up our heli footage. Now the mask for this is actually really simple since we already have some of these 3D markers in the scene. So let's just come here. It's the same as camera tracking. We just hold Control and click. Basically just trying to get the rough outline of the building. You don't have to be as precise up here since the actual helicopter and everything doesn't come up here. Then once you're up here, you can just click on the sides right here. Try to get all of that. Then when you're about to close your thing, you can hold Alt and hit C to close that up. Now we could hand animate this to the actual building and everything, but since we already have some 3D markers in the scene, we can actually go ahead and parent those. So I'm just going to hit A to select all of our masks, and then I'm going to shift click this to select that. Then I can hold Control P to parent. And now when we actually play the clip, you can see that our mask has been parented to this little marker right here, and it does a pretty good job of actually tracking to it. Now one thing you might notice is that if we actually leave our mask here and everything later in the clip, our helicopter will be blocked out by this. So to change this around frame 100 for me, I'm going to actually shrink down the mask and move it off the screen. So right here, I know I want to set I for a keyframe right here. And then one frame ahead at 101, I'm just going to shrink this down by hitting S. And then I'm just going to move this up out of the way and then hit I again. So now it's the default mask before the clip, and then right as it gets to frame 100, it shrinks down again, and it's out of the way for the rest of the shot. One final thing we need to do is add another mask. You can kind of see this little sliver right here. So to do that, we're just going to come up here to the mask. We're going to add a new mask. This mask is just going to be right here, like that. Alt-C to close up the mask, and then hit A to select all of it. Shift-click this, and then parent that by hitting Control-P. And that should stick to it pretty nicely. Same thing for the other mask. We need to, around frame 100, we actually need this off the screen. So we're just going to hit I at frame 100, go one frame ahead, and then G, move that off the screen, hit I again. Okay, so now we're actually ready to go ahead and import in our mask. Let's go to the compositing section. Let's go ahead and grab our first mask. So we're just going to make a mask node. I'm going to select, this is our first mask right here. Let's just shift control click this to see what this looks like. You can see that it basically gives us a white and black image that we can use to actually use as a mask. So I'm going to plug this into the factor of alpha overnode. Let's see what that looks like. You will notice that our helicopter is still there, and that's actually because by default the mask is inverted. So let's go ahead and add a invert node just to invert that. So now the helicopter should be gone. Now if I go ahead and render out an image of where the helicopter is going to be in our little track right here, let's just go view that. We can actually see that the helicopter doesn't show up at all, and that's actually because we have our mask overlapping with each other. So let's go back here, go to the compositing tab. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this. We're just going to Control-C like that. Then we're going to get rid of that mask and import in our other mask. So now if we shift control click this mask down here, we can see that this area outside is the white and this area inside is the black. This area is the area that it's actually compositing out. Now if we look at this other one, we can see that this is white and the other part is black. So what we can actually do is go ahead and add in a mix node to combine these together. Let's just mix that. Then we're going to mix this and this together. Now if we view that now, you should see that nothing has really changed. It kind of looks like the default mask down here. So what we need to do is change it from mix to screen. So now you should see that we have our little white triangle inside this building. So that's what we want. We can go ahead and dump that into the factor of alpha overnode and give that a look. Okay, so now if I zoom in here, you should actually see that we can see the helicopter in this little part. So that's all looking good. Now one thing that we will notice is that back here you can kind of see these buildings are kind of have some mist over them and look kind of faded and everything, whereas our helicopter looks as bright as it would be if it was right here. So we actually need to change that, kind of blend it into the scene a little bit more. So let's get back out of this. We actually need to enable a mist pass. So if we come up to the view layer properties and then enable this mist, you'll see right here we now have a new mist pass. So how we're going to combine that is to actually, now you can see that we actually have this mist pass right here. If I go ahead and view that, you will notice that nothing pops up, and that's actually because we haven't rendered out an image yet. So let me go ahead and do that. So now that I've done that, we can actually see the mist pass in the background. We will notice that it's basically black towards the camera and then white further away from the camera. So we actually need to play around with this so we barely see the actual helicopter in the back. To do this, let's go back into layout mode. And then we can actually view this by going on the camera, making sure that in the viewport display we have mist enable. And then once we have that, we can actually go ahead and go to the world properties, and in this mist pass section, we can now see there's a little line from the camera. We basically need that line to go as far out as the actual helicopter right here. So let's just go to the start of the clip. Then I'm going to increase the depth all the way until it basically surpasses this little helicopter right here. Let's go ahead and render out this and see what this looks like. Okay, so back in the compositing section, if I zoom in, you can kind of see a faint little thing of a helicopter. Okay, so now we actually need to take this pass and actually add some mist to our scene. So first of all, let's just add in a mix node real quick. Then I'm going to plug this denoise image to both of these sockets, and then the mist into the factor. Instead of mix, we actually need to add this to screen, and then we can just replace this image socket up here. Okay, so as you can see, nothing has really happened to the helicopter, and that's actually because we don't have one of the actual denoise nodes be lighter than the other. This is basically acting as our mist. So let's go ahead and add in a gamma. This is basically just to lighten up one of these images. So if I go ahead and view this, we can kind of zoom in a bit to see how it's affecting the actual helicopter. Let's decrease the gamma down just a tad. And if you view real closely, you should see that the helicopter is now brighter. So let's just decrease this one or two more, just so it's a little bit brighter. So that's looking good. Let's go ahead and view what that has done. Okay, so now you can see that the helicopter in the back has some mist on it and everything. It's not the bright color as it was before. I'm actually going to decrease it just one more, just to add a little bit more mist. So now that looks good. You can see that it has some mist on it now, and then if I come throughout later in the clip and render out this, you will notice that the mist has actually gone away a bit when it gets towards the camera. Okay, so that is all looking good. Now we just have to finally render out our animation. Now we could render it out all together, but we actually have some issues because this movie clip node and this render layer node actually have two different color spaces that they use. So what we need to do to get around this is to actually plug this screen into the composite node. This will basically only render out the helicopter with a transparent background. So then we can go to the output properties, go down to the output section. We're going to go to a new file location. Once we're here, we can right click and go to new folder. I'm just going to name mine image sequence. Like that, we can double click into that, hit accept. We do want it to be on RGBA and then PNG, and then the compression down to 0. And now we're actually ready to render out the animation. Okay guys, so my render just finished, so let's go ahead and hop out of here. Now we actually don't need these nodes down here anymore, so let's just move these down here and press M to mute those. Now we need to import our image sequence in, so let's just add a image node, and then go to this. We can just select A to select all those, open image, and then we can just plug this image socket into the image of the alpha over node. And now for the whole reason that we did this, we can go to the render properties color management and change it from filmic to standard, and now the color should be more accurate. One final thing that we need to do is to actually go ahead and do some color correction, because right now the helicopter didn't really look like it's in the scene, and we can do some more stuff. So let's just go ahead and add a color balance node. Basically we're just trying to play around with some of these sliders, so the helicopter looks like it's actually in the scene. Right now I notice that the blacks are a little too high, so I'm just going to increase this slider and maybe the gamma a bit until we get something like that. I might also increase the lift just a tiny bit. Just basically trying to move around these sliders until I get something I want. Okay guys, so I basically just played around with it until I got something I like. Here is the after, and then here is what it was before. So basically just increasing the gamma and stuff until it looks pretty good. So this is actually where I'm going to leave it. I think it looks pretty good. We can just scrub throughout here just to make sure that we do have our image sequence and everything is looking good, which it is. We do want to make sure that our mask has remained where it is, and we might actually need to blur it a bit depending on if we want it feathered or not. Let's zoom in a bit and see. So if we can see up here, it's so small that we won't really notice any feathering or anything, so I'm just going to leave it how it is. So final things that we need to make sure is that our composite node is plugged up to our alpha over node like that. Then we can come over to the output properties. We're going to specify a new location for our video file. So I'm just going to name mine. Okay, after we've done that, we can change the file format to ffmpeg. In the encoding section, we need it to be a MP4 and then high output quality. And now we can actually go ahead and render the animation again. Okay guys, here is our final result of this tutorial series. Hopefully you guys learned something new and got something out of this. This was a pretty basic scene to make. It only took me 1 hour the first time I was making it. If you're interested in watching my whole process, the link to that is in the description below. Anyways guys, we have a Patreon and Discord. Links to those are in the description below. But anyways guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.